So I just want to, what I'll do very quickly, I'm gonna run through the syllabus and stuff either tomorrow or Thursday. I'm not gonna do that today, I don't think, because we don't have a whole lot to do this week. So we have a little bit of time, so we'll do more fun stuff at the beginning. But anyhow, the gist of it, it's pretty straightforward. Here's some contact information. Here's a link to syllabus and course overview, some videos there. Here is the actual syllabus, which we will go over at some point. And then week by week, this actually needs fixing. It's nothing due this week, which I can fix right now. So there's actually nothing due this week. But after this week, there will be 2 reading question assignments due. Normally there's 1 in the fall semester class. In this semester, there's 2 due per week. So you will, those should keep you fairly busy. You may, some weeks will have time, and I'll try and give you time to work on them in class so you can ask questions about them as you begin to work on them. But anyhow, here they are. Here's reading questions, so those 2 assignments are due this week. And every assignment's due by the Sunday of that week, so here in red it tells you when it's due. There's links above it, so there's a second website that we'll be using. There's links to in the Moodle, so here it says Culture, Religion, and Morality, Readings and Videos. I guess it's a little hard for you guys to see. So Reason and Morality, this is going to be our readings and videos for this week. If you click that link and click the link again, it takes you to a second website. So there's a lot of, all the resources are here. It'll tell you what the readings are for this week. For this week, there's 1 reading only. It's from the textbook. Somebody have a copy of the textbook on them that they can show the class in case. There it is. It should be available in the bookstore. Did anyone go there and purchase it recently? It's probably available maybe cheaper online, but it's probably too late for that now if you want to. So it's a little expensive, my apologies. Part of being a college student. Okay, so there's just 1 reading if you click this link. So for each week, if you click the readings and videos link, it'll take you to this other link. So for this is week 2, there's Culture, Religion, and Morality readings, and there's also Moral Philosophy, Moral Emotions readings and videos. So we're going to go through both of these materials. Sometimes there will be additional readings I'll give you from beyond the textbook, and the general rule is at the beginning of class we're going to mostly use the textbook. The second half of the class we're not really going to use the textbook. That's kind of the way the course goes. Because the first half of the class is more theory, the second half is more contemporary moral issues, so those things are not covered in textbooks usually. There's just readings on different issues. Alright, any questions about any of that?
So the first week we only have 1 reading due.
So for this week there's actually nothing due. We're going to go through some readings and some videos. There's a link here, but there's nothing due this week. The first thing that's due is, well, that date is definitely wrong. That date is correct up there. So it's going to be the 25th. I forgot to change the date for that one. I guess for all these. Okay, it's from last semester. I didn't change the dates. But the dates up here are correct. So for each week it's due the 25th. Like, you don't have anything due till June 25th, 11:59. Then the next thing you have is July 2nd, 11:59, etc., etc. The only thing you have due in this class are your weekly reading questions. There's no exams or anything like that. There's also a class participation grade. We'll get into that a little bit more, but essentially it's just your reading questions that are determine your grade. So that's the gist of it. I'll run through the syllabus in more detail at some point before the end of this week, like I said, but I just want to give you the very basics. Any questions about that? Okay. And if you have questions as you go along, just let me know. Alright, so I thought, the way I organized the course, we don't have anything due this week, and we have some material I want to cover. Chapter 1 of the textbook. It's a pretty short chapter. It's not a lot of material. So that gives us some time to kind of ease into the topic and get a sense of what we're going to be talking about and some of the challenges. So that's kind of, I've never really done exactly what we're going to do today in the next few days, but that's kind of what I'm experimenting a little bit, see how it goes. So, well, I don't want to, anyhow, I'm going to tell you about some different psychology experiments, which will hopefully set the stage for some of the things we're going to talk about shortly. But before we do that, what I want you guys to do is take out a piece of paper and a pen. So here's what I want you guys to do, and this is only going to work if you're as honest as possible, and you don't have to put your name on it, so it's going to be totally anonymous. I want you guys to think about some of your most important moral beliefs, things you think are definitely right and wrong, that are kind of controversial. Maybe it's abortion, or gun control, or taxes, or something like that. So think about some beliefs that you think are very important, or whether you believe America is a racist society, or whether you believe whatever sort of some of your fundamental beliefs about the world are in society that we live in. Your religion, is obviously an important source of moral beliefs. Okay, so right, yeah.
Sorry, are we just making a list, or like we writing in the sense that like I believe in it?
You can just make a list of some of your sort of core moral beliefs. So this will be step one. And you can write it down sentences if you want, but when you get into sort of the, you sort of inhabit that, those beliefs, think about them, get into them, and so whatever helps you do that, brainstorm, you can write sentences or whatever. So do that at the top of your page, and like I said, don't put your name on it. One of the important rules for this class is no using your cell phones, so if you're done, you can just wait patiently for a few minutes. Cell phones away, please. All right, just another 30 seconds or so. Write anything down that you haven't written down. You can even write down words that, even if they're not specific, just like Christian or Muslim or atheist or whatever, just core sort of identities that you have as well is fine. You can't think of specific things. Okay. So I don't know how well this is going to work, first time trying this, but let's give this a try. Now what I want you to do is, a little bit below that, I want you to write down some words that you think would describe someone who believes the exact opposite of you. So if you're a Christian, think about words that you'd use to describe someone who thinks those beliefs are false. Or if you think racism is a real problem in America, just think about words that would describe someone who doesn't believe racism exists, or if you think taxes should be cut, then think about someone who thinks we should have more taxes, or health care, or stronger punishments for drug violations, whatever. Just think about someone who believes the opposite of whatever the types of things you wrote down, and what would be some words that would describe that person. Think about that person, the type of person that would be. Think about some words and write those words down. And try and do it quickly. Try not to think too much about it. If something's coming to your mind, just write it down, because it's going to be totally anonymous. All right. So if you guys could just pass your papers down to the end of the aisle. I'm just going to shuffle them up. Don't worry. And no one's looking at your answers. You can pass them face down, whatever. So maybe you guessed sort of the point of this exercise. I don't know what the results would be, but in general, do you think most people have positive feelings towards people who believe different things on moral, religious, political issues, or negative feelings? So I don't know what you guys actually wrote down. We'll see. But let's get a sample. Misguided, dogmatic, pushy, motivated, persistent, irritating. That's a good list. Someone who is blind to the minor problems of America, who is more involved with money than people, a selfish person, so, stupid, careless, ignorant, naive, misinformed, disrespectful, stubborn, immature, lowlifes, losers, nice, cheaters, rude people, dark soul, heartless, criminal, evil, gullible, too trustworthy, too nice, immature, disrespectful, this person wrote free-spirited and open-minded. I don't know if that's the way they really feel. Or, okay. Irresponsible. So, pricks, assholes. Okay. So nice sample there. One social psychologist, and he noted that, and I think it's he didn't call it a rule, or principle, but this is a social psychologist, Matthew Lieberman, who's a neuroscientist and a researcher at UCLA. And I'm going to call it a rule because I like it so much, and I think it's a useful sort of thing. It's what I like to think of as the crazy, stupid, evil rule. And that is that if people believe something different than us about one of our strongly held beliefs, especially if it's related to politics or religion or morality, we tend to think that the only reason they believe that is because they're either crazy, stupid, or evil. And that's a nice thing to keep in mind, and that's what we tend to believe about people who believe something different than us. If someone believes something different than us, well, either they're just morally evil, heartless, soulless, or they're stupid, or they're just totally insane, crazy, have no touch with reality, or whatever it might be. So I think the reason I wanted to start the course this way is this is a course in ethics. So what are we, any guesses what we're trying to do in this course? What is ethics, right? And ethics is actually a subdiscipline of what broader field? Anyone know? Philosophy, yeah. So ethics is a subdiscipline of philosophy. So what are we trying to do in philosophy, but we can apply that understanding to ethics? What is philosophy most generally about? What are we trying to figure out? Well, so psychologists in many ways study different perspectives, or cultural anthropologists or sociologists, right? I could learn about different perspectives just by giving you guys surveys and getting your opinions, but philosophy is a little bit different. So, and we can put this up there. When we're talking about philosophy, philosophy is very different from what we might call the social sciences. So social sciences, we can learn about different perspectives, or another way of saying this is in social sciences we can learn about what different people believe, and not just what they believe, but why they believe it, right? We can also learn about why people believe certain things. I can study the difference between people that think we should have more gun control and less gun control. The psychological differences, the cultural differences, the factors that led people to certain beliefs. Psychologists can study those things and do study those things. But philosophy is a bit different. So this is what people believe and why they believe it. Philosophy is a bit different. Now, it is about beliefs, but it's not about what people do believe. Any guesses what philosophy is about? What's that?
Why they believe it?
No, philosophers don't really. We will talk a little bit about why in this class because it sometimes is useful to thinking about philosophical questions, but why is also part of social science. We study how people come to believe things, why they believe them. Philosophy is a little different, or radically different, you might think.
So it's not necessarily like perspective or why, like it's, I don't know.
See, you guys, and this is, in my opinion, a great tragedy that you don't even know what philosophy is about because you've never had a philosophy class, so it's not your fault. But philosophy is not about what people do believe, right? So what different people do believe. Do is in some ways the key word here. But philosophy is about what people
Should believe.
bingo, yes. Philosophy is about what people should believe. So as philosophers, I don't give a shit what any of you believe as a philosopher. What matters, because ultimately that's just an opinion, right? And as a scientist, and so one way of thinking about philosophy is it's something like science, although there's important difference. Scientists don't care what, the Aztecs believed about the universe 2,000 years ago, but however long, 500,000 years ago, or the ancient Egyptians, or anybody else in the world, ancient Europeans, or anyone in the world at the moment. What they care about is the evidence and what is true, right? So opinions, now, cultural anthropologists, social scientists, they might be very interested in what different cultures believe about different things, but scientists aren't really interested in cultural differences and beliefs about the origin of the universe. We're interested in what we can learn through science about the origin of the universe. So philosophy is something like that, in that we're interested in, another way of saying that is, if we had to put that in one word, we're trying to figure out the truth, right? Not just an opinion, but we're trying to figure out the truth of these different issues that we're interested in. So that's the general idea of philosophy, is that philosophy is about what we should believe. So ethics is what we should believe about moral issues, right? So ethics as a subdiscipline of philosophy is just what should we believe that murder is wrong, most basically. Now, most people do believe that, and that might seem like a silly question, and if there's anything we know, murder being killing someone for no good reason, sir, it seems like murder is obviously wrong, but what about universal health care? Should college education be free? Is it wrong to not help an old lady cross the road, or whatever it might be? So these are all moral issues, and different people have different opinions about them, but we're trying to figure out what we should believe. That's essentially what philosophy is all about, and that's what we're going to be trying to do in this course. Question?
I just have so many different
Yeah. We've got a few days, so that's.
I feel like there are certain things that are obvious, and then there are certain things that are just people's opinions. I mean, that's why we still, as Americans, or even as a world as a whole, struggle with certain things to this day. You can't really tell somebody, I don't know if they want to marry the same sex. You know what I mean? We're wrong if we say that.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about, murdering somebody, or even something less than that, like you said, helping that old lady across the street, I think that's kind of if you're right there across the street with her, and
yeah.
I think that's obvious. You know what I mean? So it's kind of
So that's the hard thing is we know certain things are right and wrong, right? We know on the most basic level, right? Sort of the most basic sort of fact of moral philosophy is put this way, it is wrong to cause harm for no good reason, right? So if we see someone who just goes around hitting people or killing people or even just slashing people's tires or whatever, right? So if that's the most basic thing we know about morality, is it's wrong to cause harm for no good reason. So what we have to do in philosophy is we have to try and reason our way to other things. Okay, so things like murder. Okay, murder is killing someone for no good reason, lying, theft, and again, murder is not killing anyone, but it's killing someone for no good reason. So capital punishment isn't usually considered murder, or killing in self-defense isn't usually considered murder by philosophers. Theft is taking something that's not yours. It's sort of by definition always wrong. But how do we, and that's really what moral philosophy is about, is kind of trying to come up with theories that help us get from these sort of obvious cases to, something like universal health care. Should a society provide health care to all its members, right? So how do we get from here to here? What do these things tell us about that thing? And that's essentially the challenge. What we'll do is we'll encounter various theories that try and give us a understanding of why these things are wrong, and then we can try and apply those theories So, yeah, it's kind of a process, and that's what it is, a challenge to figure those things out. And it's not easy. But I think in many ways the biggest challenge to doing that is, based on how we started the class, what would you guess? At least I'm going to say next. So what do we have to do to sort of get from some of these obvious things, these less obvious things? Gun control, drug decriminalization, taxes, which is related to all these things. What do we have to, I mean, the most basic level, what do we do if we have to try and decide what's wrong here? We have to analyze. We have to think about things, right? So we have to sort of try and think about things and think, well, does it make sense? What are the facts, right? We have to analyze. What are the facts? What are the reasons? Right? Okay. But there's a big problem here. What's the big problem? Well, it's true that we can't move, and that's something called the Izot dilemma or problem. You can't move simply from facts to, like, you can't say, well, torturing babies causes babies suffering, so therefore torturing babies is wrong. You need a moral principle. But we have our basic moral principle. But what is it about facts and reasons? There's something deeper.
There's facts and reasons supporting both sides.
Okay, so there's facts and reasons supporting both sides, and one more step. We need to go one more step.
In terms of like perspective, or if we're talking about like obvious, are we like which side are we on right now?
So we've got facts and reasons for any issue. Yes, no, on most issues, on almost any issue, and we have to decide whether the yes facts are better than the no facts, or the no facts are better than the yes facts and reasons. So and that's where the role of, we have to analyze these facts and reasons. But and this is maybe a hard question to answer, but thinking about how we started the class, you might guess, what can we say about our capacity to analyze facts and reasons? What's one of the most basic things we know about human beings?
Facts are proven already.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Like, I don't know, I couldn't find this on train of thought, but facts are already proven because it was compared to reasons are just ridiculous.
Well, take the example of universal health care. I mean, there's reasons on both sides, right? Mm-hmm. Someone could say, well, is it fair that a child whose family's poor shouldn't get health care? Is that fair? Well, at least certainly some of you would say no. Then the other side, well, is it fair that this other family has to pay for that child's health care? Is that fair? So there's a reason. You can provide contradictory reasons. So now we've just provided, in a very simple way, a reason to provide universal health care to everyone and a reason against it. So and it's more complicated than that because it's not one person literally being forced to pay for one child's health care, and who that person paying could make a difference, and how much money they make. So things get more complicated, but you can see in general how there's reasons on both sides. There's a bias, yeah. So one of the most basic facts of human nature is that we are very biased in the way we process information. And I'm going to show you some social psychology studies, but there's bias at so many different levels, and that's really what makes this challenging. So we're all here together for the next 8 weeks. We're going to be trying to figure some things out. We're going to be talking about these moral issues, and hopefully, you'd think as a society that's an important goal of ours, is to figure these things out, come to understanding of things. That's the goal of philosophy. And in theory, you might be better at doing that at the end of this class. But at the same time, our biases make it so difficult to actually do this in any way, to even begin this process, right? Because as a sort of anecdote, before we talk about anything, in one of the surveys at the end of the course, one of the questions was, did this course change your beliefs about anything? And one student wrote, no, I made sure of that. Which was pretty humorous, but that's, so, I mean, oftentimes people consciously go into a situation with someone who has different beliefs than them, and they are committed to only seeing things a certain way. But there's so many, I mean, just to give you some, well, we can start at so many levels and think about, and there's so many different ways to think about how we're biased, but I think stepping back, the most basic thing to know about human beings is we are not, quote unquote, designed. Our brains, the function of our brains is not to find truth, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, what is the function of our brains and our bodies, right? Now, speaking from a scientific perspective, that's perspective of evolution. Our brains and our bodies and our senses were designed by natural selection. So what does that mean? Our brains and our bodies were, through a process of natural selection, evolution, we possess traits that are good for what? Survival and other basic function? Sex or reproduction, right? That's what our bodies are, and our minds and our senses are designed for by natural selection, because people that didn't like to reproduce and didn't like to survive, well, they died. Those genes died off. The only people that are left after millions of years of evolution are people that like to survive and like to have sex and reproduce, and like not only to have sex, but to raise those children. On so many different levels, our brains and our senses and our instincts, if you will, they're designed for a certain purpose, survival, reproduction, and sort of coming down one level further to understand human beings, if we're to understand sort of who we are fundamentally, and this will sort of illuminate these answers earlier, what did we need to do specifically that's very different than other animals to survive and reproduce effectively? What separates us from other animals? Now, we are smarter, but it's not that, because at some point we weren't that much more smarter than other animals. At some point we basically were chimpanzees. So what was different about our group of chimpanzees that turned into humans than the other chimpanzees, you might say? What was our survival and reproduction strategy? So think about it this way. Animals have different strategies, right? What's the survival strategy for a giraffe? But what's its sort of special thing that allows it to do its job really well? Its neck. All right, so survival strategy of giraffe is have a long neck so I can eat more leaves than other animals, or eat leaves that other animals can't eat.
You stand upright?
We do stand upright, and that's part of it, but that's not the most important thing. So what's the survival strategy of gazelle? Run fast. So that's how it survives. It eats grass, so it runs fast. Compared to zebras, what's their survival strategy? So they also eat grass, but they have a slightly different survival strategy. Run with the herd. You have stripes. You merge into the herd. It's hard for other animals to eat you. Camouflage. It's sort of like a kind of camouflage, but also a herd. And, bison or whatever those.
We're social. We're social than they are.
We're social. So that is the fundamental feature of humans. We don't run that fast. We're not very strong. chimpanzee, kick anybody's ass in here. No problem. Rip your head off, eat your guts. No problem. Same thing for a lion. Same thing for a deer. Deers are pretty vicious, actually. They're really strong, right? Put a rabbit in here and ask one of you guys to catch it. Good luck with that. This reminded me of a Rocky movie. Is that Rocky where he made him chase a chicken? We can't even catch a chicken or a rabbit by ourselves. So our survival strategy, we get knowledge, we get food, and our sort of basic things, our basic information, our basic sort of needs. One social psychologist said that humans, unlike other animals, get their basic needs met from other humans. Animals get their needs met directly from the environment. Now, zebras live together in packs and whatever, but the basic principle is that humans get what they need from other people. Animals get what they need from the environment. So we are social animals. And what does that mean? How did we live? We lived in a group, right? In a social group. You might say a tribe. Probably wasn't that big, right? And so our psychology is very much designed, everything about us is designed for social living, for group living. And a big, big part of that sort of group living is, what did we have to do to survive? Especially when you think about interacting with other groups of humans, other social groups, right? We had to stick together as a group, and one of the things that really helped us do that, right? So we had to outcompete other groups. We had to get more food from the environment than them. We had to go to war with them, right? The tribe that could kill the other tribe and take their women and have more babies with their women, they produce more, right? So thinking from this evolutionary perspective, what is a very natural sort of feature of human society, certainly early human society, and we have far from transcended it at this point, and it's one of the themes of social psychology.
Sympathy or empathy?
So we do have empathy. That's one of the things, and we'll talk about that. That's what makes morality possible. We do care about other people, and that comes from caring about our children, caring about other members of our society. But there's really a flip side to empathy, or put it this way, humans can be very empathetic. You think about mothers and parents with their babies or with their family members, but there's a limit to that empathy. Where does that limit usually end?
Outside of our tribe.
Essentially outside of our tribe, and especially nowadays, our families are smaller, but nowadays you might say your family and your close friends. If you go back a few 100,000 years, or really even 10 to 15,000 years, your tribe was your family. They were the same thing. You lived, everyone was essentially related to each other, right? So it's very natural for us to be empathetic and cooperative with people within our family or tribe, people that are very similar to us, but it's very natural also to hate people that are very different from us, which is a very unfortunate reality of human society. Love does come very easily to humans. Care, selflessness comes very easily. I mean, let's look at parents, right? That comes very naturally in many ways. They give constantly to their children and to their friends. People give naturally to their friends. But we also hate very naturally. And it goes beyond just hating. It goes back to when you think about, because we're sort of not tribal animals, we're sort of rational at this point in our sort of social development. So what we tend to think about other groups, right? Other groups that look different from us, and especially beliefs weren't such a big thing in early human society, but as society went on, as societies got more complex, they started to have different beliefs. And these beliefs were really useful. They held societies together. You know, one group of people painted their face brown, another group of people painted their face red, and the brown faces believed in the water god, and the red faces believed in the fire god, or whatever. And those beliefs were really useful. They believed God was on their side, and it would make them go into battle and be willing to sacrifice themselves. One of the things social psychologists have studied is if you think someone's watching you, and this goes back to our evolutionary history, you will be much more moral. Now you can imagine how religion is very useful for getting people to cooperate, because there's no better belief than believing that someone is always watching you. And that's why religion spread, as religions are very, very useful to societies. If you just, one of the things social psychologists do, or have done in various experiences, if you just put a mirror in a room, that will change a person's behavior, right? For example, you have a donation jar, and the experiment is to see how much money people are willing to donate. You put a mirror in that room, or if people think it's not anonymous, obviously donations are going to go up. Whereas so even if people think it's anonymous, but even just having a mirror in the room will make people give more donations. I mean, that's just one simple example. So we are tribal creatures. Modern day religion, modern day politics builds on our evolutionary history, and it takes advantage of it. And that's why politics is so like, why do people hate each other so much? Why is politics so contentious, right? Well, it's because we have an evolutionary history of literally killing each other with people that believe things that are different from us. Now, it's not as common. It certainly still happens, but I mean, that used to be a really good reason to go to war. Oh, those guys over there, they believe something different than us. Let's go kill them. Now, we don't do that as much now, but there's a lot of fighting that goes on. And, anyone watch the NBA Finals recently? It's two people? Come on. Anybody like sports of any variety? Especially. So
Baseball.
everyone likes, not say everyone, a lot of people like sports. Why do we like sports? Because we like war, basically. It's a way of going to war without killing each other, essentially. It's a way of identifying with something bigger than us. We have our tribe. When our tribe wins, we feel really great, right? Anyone, you a Cleveland fan? No? Golden State? Yeah. Feel happy last night? Yeah. You feel happy when our tribe wins, right? Anyone remember when LeBron left Cleveland the first time? People were pissed. People were burning jerseys, and people were practically rioting, right? Because somebody left a sports team to play in a different city. I mean, people care about this stuff. Why? Why? Because you betray the tribe. That's serious shit, right? You don't go against your tribe. You don't betray your tribe, right? That's the thing that people like. That's one of the things people hate the most, a traitor, right? Because that jeopardizes your whole society, right? If you live in a tribe and someone, helps the enemy tribe set an ambush against you or something, like that is very fundamental stuff that goes very deep to our sort of psychology. All right. Anyhow, this was kind of a long-winded introduction, and we're going to be talking a lot of controversial issues, and hopefully, I'm sure some of you will believe different things than what I believe different things from each other. You'll be reading things that challenge your beliefs in different ways. And I would encourage you to just really think about your reactions. And there's no way to overcome biases entirely. We are biased creatures from top to bottom. We process information. And one of the biggest challenges is something psychologists call confirmation bias. It's a very general feature of human psychology. Has its roots, like everything about humans and evolution, which is we tend to look for evidence that confirms our beliefs rather than disconfirms it, right? So if we think guns make people safer, you hear one news story about how someone protected themselves with a gun, and you think, okay, that supports my belief, rather than looking at all the evidence. So we're very biased to things that confirm our beliefs, and we're very resistant to even acknowledge evidence that would disprove our beliefs. There's an evolutionary reason for that too, right? So we look for confirming evidence. So say you think, well, I hear a rustling in the bushes. I wonder if it's a saber-toothed tiger. What is worse what do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus on evidence that would lead you to believe there's nothing? So you hear a rustling, then it's quiet. Like, oh, I guess nothing. Is that a smart strategy? What's a much smarter strategy? To look for evidence to be very sensitive to evidence that confirms your belief. Because if you give up your belief in this dangerous thing very quickly, if you're like, oh, it's quiet now, everything's all safe, you're going to get eaten. So that's just that's one explanation. It's an evolutionary explanation for it, but it's a very general feature in human psychology. I'll show you guys some other experiments shortly. Okay, so I want to show you some videos with 4 different social psychology experiments related to some of these issues we've been talking about. Do you guys want to take a short break, or you guys want to keep going with it? We'll take a short break. That's what we'll normally do. Take a 5-minute break. We'll come back, and we'll watch some videos and let you guys go.